Breaking tonight, a partial verdict in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. The jury tells the judge there are unpersuadable opinions when it comes to one of those charges. What this means for Combs and the rest of the charges the jury did reach a decision on. Record holiday week travel thrown into chaos. Deadly storms moving into the Northeast, causing thousands of flights to be canceled or delayed. Severe thunderstorm watches underway from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia to New York. Meteorologist Lee Goldberg is tracking it all. President Trump's massive spending bill barely clears the Senate. So what's next for the bill that includes cuts to Medicaid and $4 trillion in tax cuts?
At the least, justice starts with an interview of the families to ask them what justice is. And we didn't get that.
A shocking turn of events in the case of the Idaho college student's murder. Defendant Brian Koberger to plead guilty in a deal, stunning some of the families of the victims, how they're responding. Life after lockup, fresh out of federal prison, reality stars Todd and Julie Chrisley remain unapologetic, firing back at critics of their presidential pardon.
Convicted by a jury of our peers, were we? I didn't see multimillionaires in that jury box. I didn't see people that were in the film industry in that jury box. I saw people in a heavily Democratic county.
On USAID's last day in existence, a report warns of the harrowing domino effect losing the agency could have around the globe. Looking back at the impact of the famous televangelist Jimmy Swaggart, whose ministry was toppled by scandal.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us tonight. Millions of people are under alerts for damaging winds and flash flooding as we head into the busiest day for holiday travel. We'll have the latest forecast and a look at conditions on the roads and at the airports in a moment. But we do begin with breaking news in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Late this afternoon, the jury said that they had reached a partial verdict on 4 of the 5 counts, but they are stuck on the racketeering conspiracy charge. The 7-week case against Combs was packed with graphic testimony and sexually explicit images. Earlier today, the jury asked for a transcript from Combs' ex-girlfriend's testimony about a 2016 hotel attack captured on surveillance video. It shows Combs kicking and dragging her in a hallway. She said she was trying to escape a so-called freak-off when Combs assaulted her. Tonight, the judge told the jury of 8 men and 4 women to keep an open mind before sending them home for the night. Our legal expert, Bernarda Villalona, is here to help us understand what these developments may mean for the case. But first, let's get right to our ABC Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky at the courthouse.
Tonight, 13 hours into deliberations, jurors said they have reached a verdict on 4 of the 5 criminal counts against Sean Combs, but said they're stuck on the racketeering conspiracy charge, the judge instructing them to keep going. The 8-man, 4-woman jury sent a note saying there are unpersuadable opinions on both sides. The note said the jury is prepared to release a verdict on the 2 counts of sex trafficking and 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. When the note came in, Combs, who was denied all charges, looked stricken. He sat in a chair with his chin resting on his palm, defense attorneys standing in a huddle around him. At one point, Combs wiped his eyes. His mother, sons, and twin daughters sat stone-faced in the second row. Racketeering conspiracy requires jurors to find Combs led a criminal enterprise and agreed to commit at least 2 of 8 underlying crimes, like arson, where prosecutors allege he jealously ordered the firebombing of rapper Kid Cudi's car, or bribery, where they say he tried to pay off a hotel security guard after surveillance cameras captured him attacking Cassie Ventura. The judge told jurors, "I ask at this time that you keep deliberating." He reminded them of their duty to consult with one another and to deliberate with a view to reaching an agreement, adding they should not hesitate to change an opinion when convinced that it is erroneous.
So the jurors will be back at it again tomorrow morning. Aaron Katersky joins us live once again from outside the courthouse. Aaron, the jury says that they've reached an agreement on 4 counts, but they're stuck on that racketeering conspiracy charge. So what happens now?
So they're going to come back and start fresh in the morning, Lindsay. That's the only thing we know for sure. We also know there is consensus on 4 of the 5 counts. But what this means for Sean Combs being stuck on the racketeering conspiracy, we're not sure, and we don't know which way they're going on the other counts, based solely on Combs's demeanor as the note was being read in court. He doesn't seem to think this is going very well for him, but it's impossible to know. one thing about the racketeering conspiracy charge, it's complicated. It has multiple components. The jury could be stuck on what it means to be part of a criminal enterprise. The judge is asking them to keep an open mind. Linsey?
All right, so they're back at it again tomorrow. Aaron Katersky for us. Thanks so much. Trial attorney and ABC News contributor Bernardo Villalona joins us now in studio to break it all down for us as always. Okay, so what do you make of the jury not being able to all agree on this racketeering conspiracy?
So I'm not surprised that the jury has difficulty in reaching a unanimous decision on the racketeering conspiracy, because it is a very difficult charge. It is difficult for some attorneys to even understand. So imagine just a lay person who's not in the legal field. So the racketeering conspiracy, it has very few parts to it. In terms of racketeering conspiracy, one, you have to find that there was an enterprise and that there was an agreement to commit 2 criminal acts as part of this enterprise. But when you look at those criminal acts, you're talking about 8 different criminal acts. So you have many trials within this trial for each of those criminal acts. You got to think with the bribery, you got to think with the arson, you got to think with the witness tampering, with the possession with intent to distribute. And you also have the counts of sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution. So if this jury was able to reach a decision already as to sex trafficking as to Cassie and to Jane, and transportation to engage in prostitution as to Cassie and to Jane, they have a decision as to that. So they're probably getting stuck on either one, the enterprise itself, whether Sean Combs and people, whether his personal assistants or security, assisted in committing these criminal acts. That's one. Or whether they're tied up on trying to reach a decision as to one of those other predicate acts. So we don't know. But in terms of they're at a deadlock at this point, and I actually won't use the word deadlock, because ultimately when they said deadlock, that's when the judge is going to read the Allen charge. Right. And after that, can't reach a verdict, then he'll take that partial verdict.
So help us to understand, and this is reading the tea leaves a little bit.
Yes.
But if you have these 4 counts that they've agreed to on the trafficking, would it be hard for those to all be not guilty and they're still divided on the racketeering?
So it's possible. I can see a world where it is not guilty as to those 4 counts, and also I can see a world where it is guilty of those 4 counts or of some of those counts. The only thing that makes it different from the racketeering conspiracy is this enterprise part. It's the enterprise part. That's what makes it different, the racketeering conspiracy, from the other 4 counts. So that's why I think the hiccup is either in the enterprise part or whether there's a hiccup as to the other predicate acts, and they've already reached a decision as to the racketeering conspiracy. Because remember, yesterday, they started asking questions about the possession with intent to distribute. You cannot evaluate those predicate acts unless you reach a decision as that there is a racketeering conspiracy.
Right.
But again, we don't know. It could be 1 juror, 2 jurors, or 10 jurors against 2. We're not sure.
So one thing that we do know is the jury cited what did they call it? Unpersuadable opinions.
Yes.
Have you seen a scenario? Because, of course, the judge said, OK, go back and think about it again, keep an open mind. Have you seen it where they were able to ultimately, a jury was able to ultimately say, OK, we were able to convince everybody kind of to come to one side?
Yes, I've seen it. You have to think it's only day 2 of deliberations, and it's not like on day 1 they had a full day. And when I say it's only day 2, they've listened to over 25 days of trial testimony. Hey, I've been in the courtroom for every day of the trial testimony. So it's a lot for them to go over. And aside from that, they heard from 34 witnesses. So it's a lot to mull over. We're hoping that with the night tonight, they get to relax. They're thinking about their personal views. And then ultimately, they'll probably come fresh mind tomorrow morning, probably with more questions or a stronger position to be able to argue to the person that's not in their position. But I will say this, Linsey, a verdict is not official until you take it from the foreperson. And I say that because I am concerned that with the jury, with having not taken that jury verdict, that partial verdict today, that someone tomorrow can say, you know what, I changed my mind as to the other 4 counts. So I am concerned about that. But really tomorrow, I think there's going to be a verdict either way, whether this jury is able to reach a decision as to racketeering conspiracy. I think at some point tomorrow, because we have the July 4th weekend coming up, and they're not working July 3rd, that they want to reach a decision. So the judge will ultimately take a verdict.
Bernardo, thank you so much. as always. Summer storms are wreaking havoc on 4th of July plans across much of the country. Millions of people are under alerts for damaging winds and flash flooding, with dangerous thunderstorms moving up the I-95 corridor. All this ahead of what is expected to be record travel over the holiday break. Meteorologist Lee Goldberg is standing by with a look at the forecast. But first, Stephanie Ramos is at Newark International Airport.
Tonight, flight cancellations and delays increasing by the hour as powerful storms packing wind, hail, and lightning target the Northeast for the second night in a row. Interstate 95 inundated amid a flash flood warning for Philadelphia late today.
This is a reminder, turn around, don't drown. If you see water over the road, do not try to drive through it.
White House flags rippling in the wind as the storms engulf the nation's capital. Overnight storms dumping half a foot of rain in parts of Pennsylvania, triggering a flash flood emergency in Lancaster County. And in Wilmington, Delaware, a 79-year-old woman was killed when a tree fell right in front of the car she was riding in. The driver swerved, but it was too late. Those storms also brought ground stops to most of the major Northeast airports on one of the busiest days to fly. Our Gio Benitez with teams from United Airlines early this morning as they tracked traffic in and out of Newark Airport.
We are inside the United Operations Center here at Newark right now. It is very, very busy. More than 500,000 United passengers this week alone. And take a look. They are watching that weather very closely.
With 300,000 flights scheduled nationwide, the FAA says this could be the busiest 4th of July holiday period in 15 years.
That is the expectation. A lot of people heading to the beach or barbecue. Stephanie Ramos joins us now. We know that a lot of flights were canceled today. Which airports were hit the hardest?
The most affected airports right now, D.C. Reagan, New York LaGuardia, Linsey, and where we are, Newark Airport. Truly, travel is a mess. More than 1,300 flights have been canceled nationwide. Linsey.
All right, Stephanie Ramos for us. Thanks so much, Stephanie. And let's get right to meteorologist Lee Goldberg from our New York partner station, WABC. Hi, Lee.
Hey, Lindsay. Boy, a rough evening in the Northeast. We get through a couple of hurdles. We'll have a great 4th forecast. But until then, downpours continue from parts of Virginia into southern New Jersey, where we have a severe thunderstorm watch. We've had flooding and trees down in D.C. and Baltimore and Philly. Still have some flood warnings. Severe weather has kind of circled New York City, but still some downpours. Even have some heavier showers getting toward Boston. But the severe threat is really from Virginia all the way up to parts of New Jersey in the evening hours, where we can have some damaging winds and flash flooding, and certainly some dangerous lightning. This area is waterlogged, so very heavy downpours causing the flash flooding, but at least it tapers overnight. Just some showers left along the I-95 corridor tomorrow morning. Then we start to dry out. There will be one more round of storms on Thursday before the low humidity air comes in. So comfortable for July 4th. Not the case in the southeast. There's a front straddling Florida, low pressure line. There is a small chance for tropical development. The next named storm would be Chantal. That's unlikely, but regardless, there'll be heavy downpours and days of rain, so that's going to be unsettled into the holiday. Meanwhile, the rest of the country got some big time heat getting into the Midwest. Chicago in the mid-90s, showers northern Rockies into Texas. The west looks pretty dry, and again, other than parts of Florida, the east looks great and rare low humidity for the 4th of July. Lindsay?
All right, we'll take that. Lee Goldberg, our thanks to you. The Senate passed President Trump's sweeping spending and tax cut bill today after a record 26 hours of voting. Vice President J.D. Vance was called in to cast the tie-breaking vote. The bill now faces new Republican challenges in the House. President Trump is defending his cuts to Medicaid while threatening his former ally, Elon Musk, one of the bill's most vocal critics. Our Mary Bruce reports from the White House.
Tonight, President Trump's sweeping bill slashing taxes for the wealthy and boosting spending for immigration enforcement, squeaking through the Senate with a tie-breaking vote from the vice president.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the vice president votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed.
The bill features roughly $4 trillion in tax cuts, mostly for the wealthiest Americans.
That will spur economic growth and more jobs and opportunities for American workers.
It also fulfills the president's campaign promise to eliminate taxes on tips and overtime. And it includes deep cuts to Medicaid, which the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says will cause 11.8 million Americans to lose their health insurance over the next decade.
The American people will not forget the betrayal that took place today.
3 Republican senators voting no: Susan Collins of Maine, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, and Rand Paul of Kentucky. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska delivering the deciding yes vote after negotiating an Alaska exception for some cuts to food stamps. She called her decision agonizing.
Senator Paul said that your vote was a bailout for Alaska at the expense of the rest of the country. Oh my God. That's what Senator Paul said.
We said it was easy. Senator, we've got the...
I didn't say it, ma'am. I'm just asking for your response.
And after a long pause...
Do I like this bill? No. Because I tried to take care of Alaska's interests. But I know that in many parts of the country, there are Americans that are not going to be advantaged by this bill. I don't like it.
But in Florida, where he was touring a new detention facility for undocumented immigrants, President Trump thrilled.
The big, beautiful bill just passed in the Senate.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Thank you.
Trump has repeatedly pledged he would not cut Medicaid. He now insists the cuts in the bill only target waste, fraud, and abuse.
Are you saying that the estimated 11.8 million people who could lose their health coverage, that is all waste, fraud, and abuse?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's going to be a very much smaller number than that, and that number will be waste, fraud, and abuse.
What number is that? What analysis are you seeing?
I'm not seeing a number, but I know it's much less than the number you gave.
Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House. Mary, Elon Musk has been critical of the bill in recent days. How's the president responding?
Yeah, no surprise here. The president is now lashing out at Elon Musk, who, as you note, has been critical of this bill, which would eliminate the $7,500 tax credit for electric vehicles, which has benefited Tesla. Today, Trump threatening to go after Musk using the very agency Musk himself created, saying maybe it's time for DOJ to take a hard look at his government contracts. Now, as for the future of this bill, tonight it is now in the hands of the House, where already, Lindsay, it's facing resistance from some Republicans.
All right, Mary Bruce for us from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary.
Thank you.
And joining us now to discuss how the spending and tax bill will affect states is New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Governor, thank you so much for joining us. The GOP mega bill is now in the House for reconciliation. One point of contention, as you know, is a significant decrease in fundings for programs like SNAP and also Medicaid. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, New Mexico has almost 900,000 residents enrolled in Medicaid, nearly 500,000 receiving SNAP food benefits. States will have to pick up the tab if the federal government cuts that funding. Can New Mexico afford it?
Well, no state can afford to do this by itself. That's the point. This is going to have generational, lasting negative impacts. 20% of New Mexico hospitals and healthcare providers could close. At least 8 immediate rural hospitals, that means for hundreds of miles, have no emergency care. And really what this is so that the president's very rich, ultra-wealthy billionaires can continue to enrich themselves. Poor people get stripped away of food and health care. It is the most outrageous betrayal to middle class and poor Americans I've seen in my entire career.
What else in this bill is concerning to you and your state?
Well, I mean, it's sweeping cuts. If they were really interested in healthcare reform, they would do healthcare reform. They were really not. It's just a lie that he continues to lie to Americans who really want to believe that the president has their best interests at heart here. Patients are not committing fraud, sure. We just saw a big fraud case dealing with Medicare and catheters. Did he add investigators? Is he adding personnel to deal with that for big, rich providers? No. He's punishing Democratic states. And you can see that by this sort of retaliatory effect by taking away the Inflation Reduction Act investments. Now he's just hurting people's jobs. And those folks who, frankly, probably deserve to have something different with taxes on their tips aren't going to have access to health care. That's going to be their trade-off. And when you have cancer or a catastrophic accident, this is going to really hit folks who took him and the Congress at their word that he would protect them and he wouldn't cut Medicaid. He lied.
One of the other aspects of this bill is removing taxes on tips and overtime wages. Is that something you support?
Well, in general, but not when you use that as sort of a bait and switch to get rid of all of the healthcare underpinnings in this country. Remember, a lot of the folks, certainly in New Mexico, who get taxes on their tips, who are taxed on their tips, might be veterans. Might be folks who were served by the Indian Health Services Act, which is Indian health care, and they aren't going to have any access to that health care anymore. I don't know of a single American who said, you know what, I'd like a middle-class tax benefit, but what I'd like you to do in order to get that for me is to give your buddies an extra huge tax deduction while adding to the deficit and ripping away food security from my family and my health care access. That is not what was promised. And that's exactly what's going to happen in America. I have no doubt that the House passes this bill, and I'm really disgusted about what's going to happen. And you asked me a very specific question. New Mexico is going to lean in as hard as we can to protect New Mexicans. But at the end of the day, this is a $20 billion hit for 10 years. We just got voted, fourth best in terms of food insecurity improvements. We take seriously lifting up poor people. And all this does is to create more, inequity in America and more poverty.
We just have 30 seconds, Governor, but I think I heard you just say you believe that the House is going to pass this bill. You think so?
Well, so far, this is, even though they're saying they don't like it, I've heard this before. They say they aren't going to vote for it, but they do. I think they're going to deliver this bill to the president, but I think Americans should make their displeasure and their concerns loud and clear to both the White House and to members of Congress. But of course, why wouldn't I think that?
New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, we thank you so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lindsay.
President Trump was in Florida visiting a new and controversial immigrant detention center when he learned that the Senate had passed his budget. ABC's Victor Oquendo has a closer look at that.
Florida officials are calling it Alligator Alcatraz. The facility, once a remote airfield in the Florida Everglades, is now transformed, filled with white tents. The administration says it will hold up to 5,000 undocumented migrants. Demonstrators lining the streets as environmental activists and Native Americans called for the protection of the land. And all of this comes as the administration ramps up its deportation efforts. At the start of President Trump's term, the administration vowed to deport the worst offenders. Now, new data analyzed by ABC's own television station's data team shows a recent shift towards arresting migrants with no criminal convictions. When asked about the recent changes, the Department of Homeland Security maintained that 70% of the arrests ICE made were of criminal illegal aliens. But the apparent shift coincides with an increasing number of viral videos showing masked agents detaining suspected undocumented immigrants, like the violent apprehension of Narciso Barranco, the father of 3 U.S. Marines. His son, a veteran, saying he felt betrayed to see his father repeatedly struck by the agents.
I definitely felt a little bit betrayed because how can this happen to someone who has no criminal record?
The Department of Homeland Security posted on X saying Barranco assaulted ICE agents with a weed whacker.
Our thanks to Victor for that. The detention center Florida officials have named Alligator Alcatraz borders the Miccosukee Reservation. Miccosukee Business Council Secretary William Osceola joins us now. William, thank you so much for talking with us. Florida officials have said that there's not much other than pythons and alligators in the area. What do you want people to know about this location?
Well, if there's only pythons and alligators, I'm wondering what I'm doing in that area and what my people and my family have been doing in the area for centuries.
Tell us what is there beyond what they're describing.
There are about 19 traditional villages as well as our main reservation. There's also numerous gladesmen who've been there for quite a while as well. So it's not just the tribe that has a footprint in the area, but, fellow Americans.
How close is this proposed detention center to your reservation, and how may this detention center impact your tribe?
It's about a 20-minute drive from our reservation, but as I mentioned, there are villages right by. In fact, it's less than 100 yards down the road from one of our Panther Camp villages. a village that would often take our students to go gigging to engage in traditional activities. So right now, I would say it's reminding us that we are not done trying to secure our future like we thought we were.
Much of South Florida draws their drinking water from the Everglades. Should the 8 million people in the region be concerned?
I would always be concerned when there's an increased presence within the Everglades itself and the Big Cypress. You know, anybody who spends any amount of time out there can tell you there are a myriad of issues that still need to be addressed, you know, whether it's pollution or invasive species, and those haven't been addressed to the capacity they need. And now we're adding further potential issues upon that. And you're adding stress to an ecosystem that's been under enough stress already for centuries.
And billions of dollars in state and federal funds, as you know, have been poured into restoring the Everglades in recent years. Do you think that this facility will impact those restoration efforts?
It has to, because the policy that's being enacted in place right now, it's taking away from the attention of that restoration efforts. And even going back to the restoration efforts, the reason the tribe has always been involved in these, or tried to be involved in these discussions, well, we're supposed to be consulted with matters to do with the Everglades and Big Cypress. And that is a concern of ours as well, is that we were not consulted in the process of this.
This is being paid for by state and federal emergency response money. As we enter hurricane season, what's your concern?
Well, that FEMA money is very valuable in South Florida, just like many other places that are impacted by hurricanes. And we've already been impacted by hurricanes over the years, just like many other Floridians. You know, not too long ago, I was in Naples and Fort Myers doing some outreach, and I saw a lot of communities that were still impacted. You know, a lot of homes still abandoned because the resources haven't been allocated to fix those places up again. So the tribe itself has already seen the type of stress that gets put on the local and the federal government during these times of like hurricane season. And, you know, if it's not able to fulfill the duties it's supposed to during those times, just because of how stressful everything is, now you're adding another layer of complication on top of that.
We've seen video of people protesting, not wanting it in their backyard. You've named a few of your issues. What do you think is the biggest concern? And was there any process here?
It was very, to me, it was very rushed. As I mentioned, we were not consulted. And as soon as we got wind of it, it seemed like it was already there in our face. It's always a concern when we're not consulted with matters to do with Everglades or Big Cypress, since we have been the people here before there's even this type of government around us. We've seen the full changes, have the context to provide. And I think that's why it's important that our voice is not discarded in this process.
William Osceola, we thank you so much for talking with us.
Shanabish, thank you for having me.
The Department of Justice is out with new guidelines encouraging its attorneys to strip U.S. citizenship from naturalized Americans if they've been charged with certain crimes. According to a memo posted online, the DOJ is giving U.S. attorneys wide discretion to decide when to pursue the denaturalization process in order to, quote, advance the administration's policy objectives. The memo also lays out 4 other priorities for the department, which include ending anti-Semitism and taking legal action against sanctuary states and jurisdictions. The University of Pennsylvania has agreed to ban transgender athletes from its sports teams. The move comes as part of a settlement in a federal civil rights case that found the school violated the rights of female athletes. The case centered on Leah Thomas, the transgender swimmer who competed for Penn in 2022 and became the first openly transgender athlete to win a Division I title. As part of the agreement, Penn will restore individual records and titles to swimmers who lost to Thomas and send each of them a personalized apology. Tomorrow, Brian Kohberger is expected to plead guilty to the killings of 4 Idaho college students. Some of the victims' families were stunned by the news, saying that they were blindsided by the plea deal. Arcana Whitworth spoke with the parents of the victims.
A stunning development in the Idaho college murders case. Suspect Brian Kohberger agreeing to a plea deal, now planning to admit guilt in the murders of Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Madison Mogan at an off-campus home in November of 2022. In exchange, the death penalty will be taken off the table. In a letter sent to families of the victims, prosecutors say the suspect will be sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences and will waive his right to appeal. Prosecutors calling this a sincere attempt to seek justice for the families. The parents of Kaylee Gonzalez blasting the move.
We were not prepared for this. We had no idea that this was going to happen. It's the opposite of what we wanted. I won't speak on all the family's parts, but I can 100% because I was in the same room with them fighting against this decision with multiple families. This is not the majority.
The plea deal follows a 2.5-year legal battle, coming just weeks before the murder trial was set to begin. Prosecutors allege the suspect entered the King Road home early in the morning of November 13th, 2022, and brutally stabbed the 4 friends to death. 2 roommates inside the home survived, one of them telling authorities she saw a masked man with bushy eyebrows walk past her. That detail captured in this 911 call.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night.
The suspect allegedly leaving a knife sheath with his DNA on it behind. Authorities using that DNA to track down Kohberger nearly 7 weeks after the murders.
We believe we have our guy, the one that committed these murders.
The suspect's lawyers insisting he was innocent, but now he's set to appear in court tomorrow to enter his guilty plea. The state also seeking restitution for the victims and their families, saying this agreement ensures that the defendant will be convicted, will spend the rest of his life in prison, and will not be able to put the families through the uncertainty of decades of post-conviction appeals. The Gonzalez family, though, calling the deal secretive, saying there was no justice.
At the least, justice starts with an interview of the families to ask them what justice is. And we didn't get that.
Our thanks to Kana Whitworth. Pioneering televangelist Jimmy Swaggart has died at the age of 90, 2 weeks after suffering a heart attack. His multi-million-dollar ministry was toppled by scandal in the 1980s, leading to his unforgettable, tearful apology. Here's Pierre Thomas.
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
Jimmy Swaggart's tearful confession is etched in the fabric of American pop culture, an epic, some would say, biblical fall from grace. The Pentecostal boy preacher from the oil fields of Louisiana, who became one of America's greatest evangelicals.
Get in love with Jesus.
With millions of followers, a man who came to embody the millionaire televangelist of the 80s and the 90s. Like many characters in the Bible, Swaggart was complicated and interesting. The cousin of rock legend Jerry Lee Lewis. He constantly proclaimed his love for God and that the Holy Spirit had changed him.
Roots of my hair would tingle as I would sense the power of God.
Incredibly charismatic and incredibly flawed. His downfall was a desire for prostitutes that exploded into public scandal.
I beg you, forgive me.
But Swaggart never stopped singing and preaching.
Our thanks to Pierre Thomas. The White House has stopped the shipment of some air defense and precision-guided weapons that were to be sent to Ukraine. Officials said the decision followed an assessment of U.S. stockpiles. The White House said the decision was made following a DoD review of the United States military support and assistance to other countries around the globe. Coming up, what happened as first responders tried to save a woman from this fiery scene, and they were reality TV stars showing off their luxurious lives, but then ended up behind bars. Just after a presidential pardon, the Chrisleys talk about their experiences in federal prison and what they plan to do now.
We were convicted by a jury of our peers, were we? I didn't see multimillionaires in that jury box. I didn't see people that were in the film industry in that jury box.
It's been just a few weeks since President Trump pardoned Todd and Julie Chrisley. Their lavish lifestyle and rapid-fire banter earned them reality TV fame until they were convicted of fraud. They both say prison humbled them, yet they remain very much themselves. They agreed to sit down with Nightline co-anchor Juju Chang for a wide-ranging interview.
I was angry at God. I cried myself to sleep, and I said, God, why are you allowing this?
It's been just over a month since reality stars Todd and Julie Chrisley walked out of federal prison after being convicted on 12 counts of wire fraud, bank fraud, and tax evasion in 2022. Federal prosecutors allege the couple swindled at least $30 million from community banks between 2007 and 2012.
There are some who feel that you were convicted by a jury of your peers, that the appeal was not granted, and that you didn't serve your time.
Convicted by a jury of our peers, were we? I didn't see multimillionaires in that jury box. I didn't see people that were in the film industry in that jury box. I saw people in a heavily Democratic county.
They were in the midst of serving 12 and 7-year sentences before receiving a controversial pardon from President Trump.
Congratulate your parents
And I hear they're terrific people.
So I just started crying, and I said, yes, I'm getting out of here.
What was it like for you to see your dad walking towards you?
You know, the first time was 2.5 years ago when I was dropping him off in that same space and watching him walk away and know that he's not coming out. So to pull up to the same place that I dropped him off at and to see him running towards me and to see the individuals, the correctional officers, not grabbing him, and like he was free.
Viewers first met the over-the-top family more than a decade ago on Chrisley Knows Best. And for 10 seasons, they watched the trials and tribulations of the Campy household, Todd's no-nonsense parenting style, the lifeblood of the show.
I'll make a deal with you. You don't drop it like it's hot, and I won't drop it like it's hot.
That lavish lifestyle, a far cry from the prisons Todd and Julie, until recently, called home.
Did you really drive a forklift?
I did. I absolutely did. I stayed busy every day. I was going to keep my mind active, my body active, because I knew I was getting out at some point.
I read 116 books while I was gone. I read a lot of Maya Angelou, and that was very helpful.
How beautiful.
That was very helpful.
Your wife is driving forklifts, and you're
But she's always been different than me. I mean, like, you put me in federal prison, I'm not working for you. I'm not giving you no free labor. I'm not doing any of that. I'm here to do time, not your chores.
What was the first normal thing you did after coming out?
You know, I think us having dinner, sitting down and having dinner, and being together again. You know, we get to start over. And acknowledging that and giving God the glory for that.
The first meal?
Pizza Hut.
Zaxby's.
The first night of sleeping in your own bed?
Heaven.
Yes.
One of Todd's first public outings, a shopping trip to Nordstrom that went viral with paparazzi in hot pursuit.
I look up, and here comes press with long lens cameras running down the middle of the mall. And I said, oh my God. And I said, just take the picture, just do the video and release it. That'll stop them, make them leave us alone. Well, it wasn't. So I said, okay, then you know what? You're not getting the picture. I'm wearing the bag.
Now the whole family is trying to make up for lost time.
A month ago, I was sitting in prison, dreading a summer with no air conditioning. And now here I am home.
Our thanks to Juju for that. The Chrisleys' Life After Lockup is streaming now on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+. Coming up, what happens when an election is tied between two candidates? The surprising method one Texas city used to pick a winner. Plus, we're getting a clearer look at what the cuts to USAID could mean around the world. What a study reveals about how many millions of lives could be lost. Welcome back, everyone. Today, all remaining programs administered by the U.S. Agency for International Development, otherwise known as USAID, will become absorbed by the State Department. When Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in March that many of USAID's programs did not serve the core national interests of the United States, there was an outcry from NGOs which claim Rubio and the administration did not understand how USAID enabled the U.S. to wield influence and soft power around the globe for a relatively low price. USAID is tonight's By the Numbers. 83% of USAID's programs were cut by the Trump administration. USAID's mission had been to improve food security, water and sanitation, and education and economic opportunities for countries less fortunate than the U.S. The cuts could lead to more than 14 million additional deaths globally over the next 5 years, according to a new study by The Lancet. Nearly a third of those deaths could be to children under the age of 5, whose lives are more easily cut short by malnutrition and lack of medicine. When it comes to specific diseases, the study found that deaths from HIV/AIDS were reduced by 65%, and that was the strongest association found between USAID funding and mortality. Not far behind, mortality from malaria, which was reduced by 51% thanks to the taxpayer dollars that funded USAID. The authors of the Lancet study did point out some limitations of their study, namely in how they interpreted statistical associations. Still ahead, how the British royal family gets around Great Britain is about to change. We'll tell you how and why. And country music star Cole Swindell joins us to talk about his latest album and tour and how impending fatherhood could impact his newest music. Video shows a heart-stopping rescue in Florida. An election is decided by a coin toss. And with shark sightings on the rise, how can you stay safe this holiday weekend? These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. With shark season in full swing, authorities are monitoring beaches from the land, water, even the sky. With up to 400,000 people expected to flock to this popular beach on Long Island, New York this weekend, officials are ramping up patrols.
Again, we will have our helicopters out. We will have drones out.
It comes just days after a woman was apparently bitten by a juvenile shark in waist-deep water. This baby shark spotted the same day. Ocean Ramsey is a shark conservationist and the subject of the new Netflix documentary, Shark Whisperer.
I'll put myself out there for a cause.
She recently posted this video showing how to redirect a shark if it's coming at you.
Place your hand on top of the shark's head and immediately lock out your elbow as you push down and move off to the side.
A dramatic rescue in Tampa.
What's up?
Officers used a baton to break through the windshield of a burning car. A woman was trapped inside, finally able to pull the glass away and free the woman, who was able to climb out of the car. No one else was inside.
Come on. You got it. Come on. Come on.
The driver and 2 officers received minor injuries. A bankruptcy court has approved the sale of genetics testing company 23andMe. A nonprofit led by 23andMe's co-founder has agreed to pay $305 million, agreeing to maintain 23andMe's privacy policies and add data security measures. A city council election in Pasadena, Texas, near Houston, came down to the flip of a coin. Both candidates were tied with 272 votes each after a general election runoff and a recount. The toss, heads, and a win for the 2-term incumbent. The state's election code dictates the final step is for the candidates to cast lots, which in this case was a coin toss. French Open winner Coco Gauff is out at Wimbledon.
Out goes the second seed and Roland Garros champion, Coco Gauff.
She lost in 2 sets to unseeded Ukrainian Diana Yastremska. The second time in 3 years, the number 2 ranked Gauff has been knocked out of Wimbledon in the first round. Ironically, her breakthrough came at Wimbledon. In 2019, at 15 years old, she beat Venus Williams in the first round, making it to the 4th round. Players have been dealing with record heat. The end of the line for the British royal family's train. It's being decommissioned within the next 2 years. The palace says it's just too expensive to run. The train dates back to Queen Victoria and was a favorite of the late Queen Elizabeth. Now to our segment Prime Playlist Shuffle, where we sit down with artists who are transforming the music industry. Country star Cole Swindell combines storytelling about love and family with a little twang. And his 2 platinum and 2 gold albums back up his title as very much a fan favorite. The Georgia-born singer and songwriter has also racked up an incredible 13 #1 country singles as an artist, drawing fans in from around the world. Cole Swindell is now back from touring with Cody Johnson, and just days ago released his 5th studio album for Warner Music called Spanish Moss. Let's take a listen.
Then why don't we just sip on this bottle of wine, like right here's where you belong. Yeah, we got plenty of time, girl, we can always move on. Yeah, yeah, girl, we can always move on. Yeah, yeah, girl, we can always move on.
That was We Can Always Move On. Cole Swindell, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So tell me, what was the inspiration for that song?
You know, we can always move on. I think it's just an interesting take of, you know, maybe a relationship that probably isn't going to work out, but you keep giving it another try, and it's just, you know, a different way of saying, you know, we can always be over, we can always be done, but, you know, let's try to be us one more time. And it's, yeah, I think it's one of my favorites on the album, and just something, honestly, you can roll the windows down, turn up, and it's that kind of song.
Now, on the flip side, another song on the album, Forever to Me, you actually wrote that on your wedding day.
Yeah.
So a little different meaning there.
Yeah.
Did your wife, Courtney, have any input on that?
So Forever to Me, Courtney, my wife, is the inspiration behind that song. And Graylin James, Rocky Block, I wrote the song with them. They asked me if I had a wedding song picked out yet or whatever, and they're like, you're a songwriter, you ought to write it. And we were just talking about her, and I just said something. I said, man, she's forever to me. And they looked at each other, and it was just, that's how, people always ask how songs start, or how, obviously it started the minute I met her, I think, but, you know, getting to write a song so special for such a special day, being a songwriter, that's really cool.
That's natural, just just flows out there. Oh, she's forever to me. I love that. And you're a month away from becoming a first-time dad. Congratulations.
Wow, thank you so much.
So it's funny, in the first song that we played, you talk about sipping on a bottle of wine. I was curious if the lyrics and the things that you write about might change a little bit becoming a dad.
I think so. This album, we were kind of wrapping it up before we knew we were expecting. So we definitely got the love songs on this album, which I haven't really had in the past. And, I think writing about our little girl will definitely change things. And I can't wait to see what song she inspires, because I know if she's anything like her mom, she's going to be special. So,
of course, you came to prominence writing songs for Luke Bryan. That was a while ago.
Yeah.
But is it different when you're writing for yourself?
It is. I think as a songwriter first, before I ever got my record deal, you go into a room and you want to write the best song possible. But, when you become an artist, you're not just writing for everybody. You're writing for you. Things become more specific, and you're not going to, waste your time or anybody else is writing about something that you're probably not going to record or sing. So when you're writing for yourself, it does make it a little different. You're writing from, and also the stages of life you're going through, from right now where I am about to have my first child to my very first album. I'm a lot different person, different artist, songwriter, all that. So I think that's a great point. I think it's gonna change things, but I'm excited to, just that the album's out and just seeing the feedback. It's been a while since I had an album out, so to have new music out is always great.
And you're about to headline a U.S. tour in September, right after the baby's born.
I know, the timing.
Hopefully you can get some sleep, get a little rest. What can fans expect?
I think the Happy Hour Sad Tour it is what it is. I think people are looking for a way to get out and have some fun and kind of just forget about whatever's going on. If they're going through a tough time, we want to be able to put a smile on their face and make sure we give them their money's worth. If they're going to come out and support us, we take a lot of pride in our live show, and having Priscilla Block and Graylin James and Logan Crosby out there with me this fall is it's going to be fun. I love Priscilla, and I've been a big fan of hers, so to have her out is going to be amazing.
Cole, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. His 5th studio album, Spanish Moss, is now available on all streaming platforms, and his national tour hits the road beginning in September. That is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.